Monday morning in the capital, Nairobi, and conversations around sport and what's happening all around, the world as far as the news is concerned. Well, in sports today, two conversations. One, we're going to bring in a little bit of diplomacy. Kenya and Finland, where do the cooperation that Kenya and Finland has, in a lot of areas. And so we're going to be joined by His Excellency Pekka Tapiola, who is the ambassador of Finland to Kenya. So please, so he's going to be joining us shortly. And also, Kenya, think of this. In the next 2 months, we're going to be hosting the Championship of African Nations, that is CHAN. Then we are also going to be hosting the Kenya Open Golf Championship. That's a DP World Tour event. It's up there. We're going to be hosting the Sirikwa Classic. It's a gold level cross-country tour meeting. And then we've got the WRC Safari Rally. What is it that the country can do to make the most out of that over the next 2 months? And later, we are going to have the Keep Keno Classic coming in May. So a lot of events coming the way of Kenyans. And they always say there's only one way to do it. Make sure it works very well. So right now, let's also just to mention some of the other events that we're going to be looking at as far as the news is concerned. Number one is that we've got the new Ethics and Anti-Corruption CEO, Abdi Mohamed, to be sworn in at the Supreme Court at 10 a.m. And this is before the Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome. And he's going to take over from former CEO Twalib Mbarak, who exited the commission on Friday, the 10th of January 2025, after the expiry of his 6-year term. So part of the stories that we're going to be looking at today and all that is happening all around the country. Welcome, and let's get conversing. Our sign language interpreter within this hour is Brian Muraro. So right now, let me welcome Balozi and His Excellency Pekka Tapiola. I got the name right.
Yes, absolutely, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Great to be here.
Great to be here. Yes, and it's a pleasure to you. And let's just get straight into this conversation, about Finland. From those of us in the world of sport, we know it as the land of 1,000 lakes because of the rugby.
Yes.
Others call it the land of the Northern Lights. You've got...
All correct so far.
Okay.
Both correct. And
it is also a country that has had a long-standing relationship with Kenya.
Absolutely.
So, so I'm sure you already got used to being addressed to as Balozi.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So it's our way of doing it here. Yes. So just background, Kenya's relationship with Finland over the years and how the changes have come.
Well, I mean, first of all, the relationship is excellent. And I think it's worth noting that the Finnish embassy in Nairobi is our largest embassy in Africa. Just to put the importance of this country and this region. Of course, I'm accredited to 4 other countries and 2 UN organizations as well. So that keeps me very busy. But this is a long-standing relationship. And you've seen that with the Nordics, we were just celebrating 60 years of diplomatic relations. We've had an embassy here resident embassy since the late 70s. I just noted that the residence where I live was, we moved in 1980. It's been, of course, renovated after that, but it's been really a very close relationship. Now, where the relationship has been transforming is that I suppose that like with many African countries, when we came here, this was really a relationship based on development cooperation, a donor-recipient relationship. That relationship has now evolved into an equal partnership between strong countries. We are smaller than you, of course. You are a leader, a leading democracy, a leading actor in East Africa, in Africa as a whole. And I'd say that we are now very much focusing on peace and security, trade, but also development. We've been working on gender equality, countering gender-based violence, fighting against femicide and FGM are particularly close issues to my own heart. We've been improving the quality and relevance of technical and vocational education and training, and trying to get jobs and skills to a young population in a country where the median age is only 19, where you have great potential. So we are now moving away from development cooperation to this partnership, to more private sector instruments. We have an office of our Finnish Development Investment Fund, FinFund, the first office outside Finland in the world, here in Nairobi. They have a portfolio of 58 million euros of projects in Kenya. We're working on soft loan projects with something we call the Public Investment Facility. The first the first 24.5 million euro PIF project in maternity hospitals was put in place. Civil society is active. Trade is going. Academic cooperation is big. The University of Nairobi is one of the 4 universities in the world with which the University of Helsinki has a strategic partnership. So you can really see the plethora of this relationship. And as I said, we have been a superpower for peace mediation. Our former president, late President Matti Ahtisaari, had a Nobel Peace Prize for that. So we are also looking very much at how we can work with Kenya on peace mediation. So there's a big relationship there.
Well, actually, one of the ones that actually catches me is, the technical and vocational,
Yes.
relationship. And, for example, the University of Helsinki working with the University of Nairobi.
Yes.
Are you looking at this such that some of this technical knowledge, that Finland has developed over the years can now actually come down to the global south?
Absolutely, absolutely. But if I say, for instance, in TVET, where we're working together with the Germans as well, what we're really trying to propose is to work on something called a dual TVET model, which means that that not only do kids, girls and boys, get education in vocational training colleges, but they also get practical experience from companies. Because education is relevant when it brings jobs, when it brings economic welfare, when it brings futures. And that's why I think getting the corporate sector here and getting these young people from school to practice at companies, going back to school, back to the companies, and then getting employment, that I think is very important.
The whole peace building cooperation, because just looking at your portfolio, looking at you're accredited to the Horn of Africa.
Absolutely. Somalia is a very important country for us. We also have a big Somali diaspora in Finland, so there's a domestic aspect there as well. And yes, we are very committed to working on state building with Somalia and bringing stability to the region. We have Finnish soldiers working in EU training missions in Somalia. We have Finnish police officers training Somali police forces. But we also have this sort of experience of peace mediation. And in 2023, we had our first course for Kenyan diplomats here in Nairobi on peace mediation. And of course, we were in line with our sort of focus on gender equality. We were focusing on female diplomats, but also men were allowed into that course as well, as long as it was a 50-50 participation. So there's a lot we can do here.
Well, let me now also talk about the environment, because this is a sports program, and there's a lot of, you live in a country where the north, there's forests, and at parts of the north, at times can get cold, and everyone's talking about how this can affect, and it also has a connection with a lot of the sports that people in Finland do. I would call them the winter sports.
Yes, absolutely.
What are the lessons that you've learned conserving your forests and also making sure that people understand, if you don't take care of what your natural heritage is, then you may not have a future.
We have actually learned that the hard way initially. Because back in 1960s and so on, when urbanization was, we were an agrarian country to begin with, when urbanization was sort of booming and people were moving from the countryside to cities, many people inherited forests and they sold them quite easily off, and you had sort of what you'd call felling of trees, almost like you sort of raise or barber hair so that you would raise empty spots, and we saw quite fast.
Look like my haircut.
I don't. Not can make good comments on that one. So you had this feeling. You had this sort of quick way of making money on forests, and I think quite soon we realized. And I used to work for the pulp and paper industry, which did a lot in this sort of field as well. We realized that this is not sustainable. Luckily, we realized it early enough. So we really went to sustainable forestry models, where you would both make sure that your forest coverage remains, but you could also use the forests. You could fell trees and so on. You don't have to sort of barber everything. You can take a tree there, a tree here, there, and so on. You will keep your forests, but you get the economic benefit from them as well. And I think we really learned sustainable, well-functioning forestry management techniques, which we have been promoting globally as well. Sometimes we've even had problems in that we've said that we've come into countries which have tried to sort of keep their forestry coverage, and they have had a total ban on felling trees, and suddenly we see that our model doesn't work because it actually includes the economic exploitation of forests, but in a sustainable way.
So if you got to make your furniture, make sure you just get enough tree for the wood. Don't just fell it, for all of that. And
absolutely,
everyone's moving away from paper too, because that's another big part of it. And let's now come
to... I still like to have my papers in front of me, though, but I get you. Trying to go paperless as
school way. I always have the paper. We're also seeing that Finland and Kenya is doing it. It's actually, at times when I look at it, it always seems to be almost by accident or incident. First, the Embassy of Finland, not directly, but indirectly, has been involved in promotion of grassroots initiative, Mngaro Mtaani, the Sune Cup. Just as to how the Embassy of Finland got to be indirectly involved, not directly.
I know very clearly how we got involved because I was the one who involved us. Now, it is indeed true that we don't support Mngaro Mtaani directly. They're doing valuable work, organizing these cups for underprivileged kids, giving them opportunities, and I look at them from one year to another and I see the same players as well. Now, who's Sune? Sune is a retired municipal officer who's been traveling after his retirement quite a bit, and even before that around the world, also partially because his daughter is working for the United Nations, and that I think brought him also. And he's a guy with a big heart who's been sort of wanting to promote grassroots initiatives, and the named their football cup, annual football cup, the Sune Cup. Now, I was contacted by a colleague who knew the family and said that, look, there is this cup coming. Would you want to find out a bit more about it? And I sort of then sent a few messages and found this is actually so much in line with what Finland is about. Grassroots level. It's about community organization. It's about bottom-up initiatives. And when I was then asked by the organizers, would you care to come and sort of hand over the prizes and give a bit? Yeah, sure. This is the... And I really appreciate what is being done with these kids. And I'm very proud that somewhere on the said, well, what am I doing next Sunday? Or Sunday 3 weeks. Yeah, I could actually go. And now I think that we've become a bit more established in that we give some gifts to some school equipment to the kids who are playing. We're trying to support them. I'm very happy to see that boys and girls are both, and girls and boys are both playing. Gender equal opportunities are very, very important in our foreign policy. So it's been kind of a very nice thing, and a very Finnish thing in its low-key way, to support, and that's actually how I waded into this. And I certainly, now this is the third time I've done it, last weekend, and I'm certainly, or not last weekend, before last, and I'm certainly committed to ensuring that when I leave one day, that my successor would continue doing this, because this is really, really nice. It's really a nice thing. It's a good thing, and I see the kids, I see their passion, and actually they're becoming better players every year.
Well, interesting enough, when you talk about gender equality, when it comes to the football side, we always say that the Kenyan the women's national teams are outperforming the men's teams left, right, and center. Mm-hmm. Well, the results are there, and they do speak for themselves. But there is one aspect that you want, that whenever, I've seen the sport being used sport for development or, working at grassroots level at this level is trying to bring in the whole aspect of fair play such that,
Yes, absolutely.
you don't have the, what would I say, the full-time winner-takes-all mentality. What are some of the things that, the initiatives that, you'd like people to learn from what Finland has done and can be imparted in Kenya?
Well, I mean, I really like what you're saying, that we should not have a winner-takes-all mentality. And I have to say, when I look at these kids play, it's the participation which matters. Of course, everybody wants to win, but it gives opportunities, it gives possibilities. And sometimes, for instance, the best goalkeeper is not from the winning team. The best striker is not from the winning team. So it really does give possibilities. Now, fair play is extremely important. I had a boss who used to say, please play by the rules, not with the rules. And if I've ever taken one motto in my life, that's been it. Play by the rules and not with the rules. Don't give bribes, don't try to find shortcuts, do it right. You can't, very often at least, bribe a football referee. They're pretty tough, but they are there to ensure that people are playing fair, and that fair play is there. And that is one thing why I think it's so important that young kids play sports. They don't get the feeling that, well, we really have there are shortcuts in life. No, you have to do it. You have to play. You have to follow the rules. You have to know the rules. You have to play by them, and that will bring you success. And that's what every speech I've given when I've been giving these prizes has had that quote from my former boss Javier Solana, whom I worked for when I worked for the EU, which was, "Don't." And he said it to a president who had been playing with elections, and had said that once. Not in this country. I'm not going to tell which country. Just don't play with the rules. Play by the rules, not with the rules.
Well, a very strong message that comes through, and everyone who's watching then, you can pick that phrase and keep it, write it, curate it, and do not forget about it. Something more Finnish, winter sports.
Yes,
here's the story.
Freezing, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the story. Kenya has been at the Winter Olympics since 1998, and everyone, for the first time, what they said? Well, Kenya are trying to bring out something, or is it the sports kids that are trying to market themselves by involving Kenyans in winter sports? Cross-country skiing is one of the sports that Kenya has been represented in at the Winter Olympics, and at the moment, the one sure person we know who can always be at the Winter Olympics is Sabrina Zimmer, who is an alpine skier. But let's talk about cross-country skiing and...
Yes.
The fact that Philip Boyt, the first Kenyan to be, to have gone to the Winter Olympics, trained in Finland. Just give us, the culture of this. It's long winters, lots of snow, probably all year round.
No. We have very hot summers actually nowadays. So, but yeah, long winters in that, and hopefully enough snow. Global warming has made this, and climate change has made this all so much less predictable than earlier, but I suppose we're a good place because the likelihood of snow in especially northern parts of the country is still very, very big. Yeah.
So the whole culture of cross-country skiing and how, Finland, impacts this, and anyone who wants now to be a Winter Olympian, maybe that's the only place they would have to go to, just like Philip Boyt.
Well, cross-country skiing is really in our DNA. We have a big country. In terms of size, it's a very, very big country. In terms of population, it's not a big country. It's about the size of Nairobi as population in a country which is very, very big, where it's 1.5 hours to fly from south to the north. So distances have been big. In winter, skiing was the way to get from one place to another. I have family who've been in reindeer farming in Lapland and so on. So when you listen to the amount of sort of territory they've covered in skiing, 50 kilometers, something like that a day and so on. So I suppose that cross-country skiing becomes part of your DNA. Even if I'm from Helsinki, the capital, very much sort of a city boy, in school, we were put a pair of skis on and off we went cross-country skiing. Probably I didn't become that fond of it after some of those experiences. But yes, the tradition and the terrain is there. So if you want to go somewhere, the other Nordic countries have good possibilities as well, but if you want to go somewhere to learn cross-country skiing, Finland's your place.
Well, and talking about that, the other sport that, another sport, ice hockey.
Yes.
We've got the Kenyan Lions who are coming up very slowly.
Yes, but they're coming up. I mean, I have even sort of family members of staff at the embassy who play ice hockey here in Nairobi.
Well, we've got a rink. Things we can, opportunities that, may arise. I mean, how to reach out if somebody wants to get into
Isn't it wonderful, by the way, that nowadays in this world, you can come from whichever climate, and Jamaica had a bobsleigh team, as you know.
Yes, cool runnings.
Yes, yeah. But if you want to do something, you will find a way of doing it. Isn't that wonderful?
Very great.
Yeah.
So, the other sport that, everyone would like, in Kenya, follows rallying.
Yes.
It is very deep.
Now we're getting finished.
We're getting finished now.
Yes.
Let's talk about the Flying Finns. And
yes,
first of all,
absolutely.
what makes the people of Finland good drivers? I've seen, what you'd call local rallying, where somebody would drive, they don't have the high-end cars, but when you look at the competition and the skill level, it's way out of this world.
I think actually the answer is the same as with cross-country skiing. Big country, long distances. Now the roads are good about everywhere, but there was a time when sort of you had quite a bit of dirt roads in the countryside, and you still do actually, and so on. So Finns learn to drive. They learn to drive in hard conditions. Ice, snow, sleet, mud, you name it, we'll drive in it. And that's what you see with the Flying Finns as well. It is quite a feat that in 1972, that's so 53 years ago?
Yes, 53.
3 years ago, the first foreigner to win the Safari Rally was actually Hannu Mikkola, a Finn, with a Swedish co-driver, so Nordic cooperation was very much there. And there have been others. There have been Vatanen, Kankkunen, others. And even now, the last two Safari Rallies have been won by a Finn, a young driver by the name of Kalle Rovanperä. So I think that our distances, terrain, climate conditions make us like driving in difficult circumstances and being quite good at it. And that's why we've had all these great rally drivers. And rally is a big thing also in Finland. And I have to say that the first time I heard about Kenya as a kid was linked to the Safari Rally. Because of course we were very proud of our drivers.
And, okay, just a quick one. How long does it take to get a driving license in Finland?
Oh my goodness, it's been far too long since I got one. A few months, a couple of months, I would say. It's there. You have the theoretical part, the driving lessons, and since we play by the rules and not with the rules, I can tell you our drivers, when they do rally, may do pretty rough stuff, but our driving teachers in the city will certainly be very strict with you. I flunked my first driving exam just simply because I wasn't attentive at a small little sign. We're very, very rule-abiding, so we do learn to drive. But then once you get your license, you have a speed limit for a while. You have to get some extra training. You have to learn to drive in winter in difficult circumstances. And we are very, very... so we want our drivers to be good, and we want our drivers to be polite. And my other message to Kenyan drivers is pedestrians always first. One of the worst things you can do in our driving culture is that if you have a cross, even without a traffic light, and you don't stop for a pedestrian, and that's all over Europe, you will have a big problem with the police. So pedestrians first, they are king. Cars come second, but if you get off to the muddy roads, then you can play being a Flying Finn.
Well, and looking at the heritage of all these, when we go through them, from days of Hannu Mikkola, Ari Vatanen, you have Kankkunen coming much later.
Ari I know quite well, actually.
Ari.
Yeah.
Yes. There is, I think Ari won in 83. He won the
83, but when I got to know him, he was actually a member of the European Parliament representing France, but still a Finnish citizen.
Yeah, I mean, when I had that story, I actually got shocked. I wondered, okay, so what's going on here?
Yep.
Later, drivers will come in much later. We can never forget Tommy Mäkinen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Made an impact here.
Yeah.
Harry Rovanperä,
Yeah.
and now Kalle.
Kalle.
What's that big story that comes out with Finland and rallying? I mean, when these people are known as the Flying Finns, and the story they tell.
As I said, rough roads, good driving. That's the story. We don't go for big stories. We go actually for very concrete stories as Finns.
And one of the things is, I know for anybody who, trying to get to understand how they do. We know previously we had a driver, Tapio Laukonen,
Yes.
came into Kenya, competed in the local championship, won it, but at the same time, played as a coach. Ways to reach out to these people who are out there, because you may probably not afford Kankunen or, Rovanperä Senior, but how do you reach out such that you can grow this the motorsport scene and great collaboration?
I would not make promises for them, and I don't have a direct answer for you, but I would always recommend with Finns, reach out and ask, because actually we like supporting new talent, and I think that that's something which comes very close to the hearts of many Finns. So I would sort of just simply go through the Safari Rally organization. I mean, I have to say very clearly that while they're very much our citizens, I see that the rally world is very much its own world. It's a family of its own, and where nationality is important, but being a driver is even more important. But I would say that I would always encourage people, if you want to get support from somebody, just ask. And see what's the answer.
Well, very great. And also, Balozi, I'll also tell you one other thing, something that's been, your country inspired Kenya. We've had a world champion in the javelin throw, inspired from Finland, Julius Yego. So, great inspiration always coming from the country sporting-wise.
I am very happy to hear that. I'm very, very happy to hear that.
Yes. And as we come to a close, because it had been indicated that you'd be taking just about half an hour.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll put just the direction, looking at looking at the next few days, or also the next 1 or 2 years, and the cooperation that we're going to have between Kenya and Finland going.
Okay. Now, we've had quite a number of ministerial visits and so on. So our foundations are good. We're looking for a date for a second round of senior sort of permanent secretary or principal secretary level political consultations later on. I'd say that it's really going to be this sort of varied relationship, going from working on global issues, peace, security. Kenya has been a great supporter, I mean, also in the context of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, in upholding the rules-based multilateral system. Here again, play by the rules.
Not with the rules.
Not with the rules. Secondly, trade is important. We need more economic interaction. And now the opportunities are there with the economic partnership agreement between the European Union and Kenya. So I think we should harness that also in terms of investment. But of course, I would encourage work on a slightly better investment climate, less red tape, sort of more sort of clear-cut situations. The European Union has been passing these messages. I think this is going to be very important. Economic. In terms of development, we're moving from this sort of donor relationship more to a relationship where there is mutual interest, but I think bigger projects and projects which can really take us forward, investment projects, infrastructure projects, top European technology, better than many other technologies in the world, with sort of soft loan conditions. And there is a lot of people-to-people contacts, which I would like to see. Kenya is a leader in a region. We are a key, important, small, but important country in the European Union. There's a lot we can do together.
Sure enough, and Balozi, I hope to see you very soon. We know that the Flying Finns are coming in huge numbers in March. for the Safari Rally. So I'm sure at any one point you wouldn't want to miss the spectacle, the dust, the mud, because that's what we have.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll see another, everyone will keep talking about the Flying Fins. And just to inform you, if we had a choice, we would adopt Kale Rovanpera. He's Kenyans do love him already.
I think we can sort of cooperate on this, let's put it that way.
We'll cooperate on this.
Yes, he wins in Kenya and keeps the Finnish flag flying.
Okay.
And keeps the Kenyan flag flying, reminding of the importance of the Safari Rally.
There you go. You've had it from the ambassador of Finland to Kenya, His Excellency Pirkka Tapiola. Finland-Kenya cooperation in sports, but also more so a lot happening in business and in peace building. Balozi, thank you very much for your time. Karibu.
Asante.
Karibu. And I hope that I can come see the Northern Lights myself sometime soon.
You're more than welcome.
All right, I'll do that. Well, that has been the first part of our conversation, and now we take a break. And over the weekend, the FKF Premier League resumed, and the action was all out there. Shabana playing against Tusker FC. Ulinzi Stars were also in action. Let's just get the highlights of this, and after that, let's talk about the business of sports.
Pamoja na wenzake Oliver Omondi tayari wakiongoza vijana wote 20 ili kuweza kujaa ndani ya dimba. Ni mwaka mpya, mambo mapya kabisa. Wameshinda moja na kupoteza mechi moja. Mfumo wa kocha Peter Okidi ni 4-3-3. Badiliko ni matatu. Upande wa Tusker, kocha Charles Okere Okoth, mfumo ni ule ule 4-3-3, lakini mabadiliko ni manne kwa kikosi chake. Edwin Bobby Aloku anaangalia kronomita yake ya saa na kuhakiki kuwa tupo mubashara kabisa. Karibu sana ndani ya dimba la Gusii, karibu sana maeneo ya Bosongo. Ni ligi kuu Kenya. Shabana wapo nyumbani kuweza kuwavaa wanamvinyo wa Tusker, ikiwa ni mechi raundi ya 17 ikirindimwa na kutitigwa ndani ya uga wa Gusii. Kwa hivyo kamkao wa kuenjoy, kamkao wa kupata burudani. Ezekiel Finamuri anakatao yanje kule, cheza kichwa uzuri bado. Fabian Adikin Bates naondosha kona ile. Wameanza kwa moto kweli kweli. Ililetwa ndani uzuri, akacheza kichwa cha kuparaza pale. Ikawa 1-2 Dennis Okoth, lakini shuti lake Ezekiel Dalfino Mori Starboy ikaondolewa uzuri na Fabian Adikin Bates. Amechenga uzuri George Kadu. Timu ya Gula kila kulia, analeta ndani huku. Kini anakataa Maxwell Mulili Muchesia. Kweza kucheza Brian Michira Migiro. Chini kwa chini kule ukuta umekataa. Brian Michira Migiro tena anakataa. Brian Opondo Omondi Oyande huyu. Rusha mkubwa kwenye space ile, yupo John Collins Njuguna. Wa kwanza kuwai mali ni Marco Kola. Bado John Collins Njuguna. Umechoka. Anafoka kweli kweli Maxwell Mulili Muchesia. John Collins Njuguna. Na baada hapo akaweza kutumia guu lake la kulia kuweza kufanya jaribio lile, na likatoka tu mbele ya lango lake Maxwell Mulili Muchesia, kiwa na mwenzake Rambo Crispino Tieno Rambo. Naletwa ndani, ukamshinda mpira wa kwanza. Nyamira 1. Charles Momanyi Saramu amecheza kichwa mpaka ndani, kisha naomba msamaha Wanatore Bobe. Ikaishia kwake beki pacha, wakati Charles Momanyi Saramu akacheza kichwa kule, nyuma yake Elvis Osoko Chieng na kujaza kitu ndani ya kamba zile. Ilikuwa ni free kick ya Thomas Teka, lakini akashinda mpira wa kwanza Charles Momanyi mbele yake Elvis Osok. Na baada hapo cheza naye Samuel Michael Kadoz pembeni. Sasa wametengeneza nafasi, Brian Michira Migiro, Dennis Okoth, kinyago walichokichonga wenyewe Tusker leo kimewatisha. Shabana Neyemo, kilele cha furaha, anakomboa yule waliyemlea katika Tusker Youth. Amekuzwa ndani ya timu ya vijana, huyu aliyekuzwa ndani ya timu ya vijana wa Tusker. leo amerudi na kuchoma shule na vyeti vyote. Dennis Okoth akifunga goli lake la kwanza ndani ya uzi wa Shabana. Ilikuwa ni switch yake Samuel Michael Kadoz, akaparaza tu kwa uzuri. Pasi yake Brian Michira Migiro, pale pale shuti la chini kwa chini likamtatiza kipa Brian Omondi Opondo Oyande. Kile kilichokupa furaha, kuna siku kutakuliza, kuna siku utalia wewe. Ni Dennis Okoth akiwapa goli la kusawazisha vijana wa Shabana. Na kwa mara nyingine tena anapuliza kipenga chake Pilato wa mchezo Edwin Bobia, kuashiria kuwa ni dakika 45 za kipindi cha pili. Shabana wapo mbele goli moja, vijana wa Tusker nao pia, au Shabana goli moja, vijana wa Tusker nao pia goli moja. Karibu sana kwa dakika 45 hizi za kipindi cha pili, ikiwa tupo mubashara kabisa. Tuende sambamba mithili ya samaki majini. Elvis Osoko Chieng huenda kaachiwa M10. Brian Michira Migiro, fantastic save yake Oyande. Brian Opondo Omondi, teknik maridhawa kabisa, kini kanyosha mkono pale Brian Opondo Omondi. Bila kupoteza muda anaenda kurusha George Kadu Sebo. Yupo na nafasi Eric Naman Balecho Babas, analeta minus huku. What a miss! Amekosa Thomas Omole Odhiambo Avieta. Quick restart yake George Kadu imefika hadi 18 ya Shabana. Akaingia kwenye space uzuri. Eric Naman Balecho Babas, minus bora kabisa. Lakini Thomas Omole Odhiambo Avieta kwa ameshinda mpira wa kwanza, lakini Elvis Osoko Chieng akakosa mpira na kucheza mguu. Melishwa kadi ya njano Elvis Osoko Chieng. Anaingia uzuri Brian Michira Migiro. Buti mpya, no problem. Kevin Omondi. Omondi natoka nje. Napata nafasi na naona ni bora apige fataki ya mbali Kevin Omondi. Kile ilikuwa ni pasi yake Brian Michira Migiro. Katilia fataki, tayari alikuwa amekava na kudive kulia kule. Sasa amepanda Collins Odhiambo, analeta cross kule. Jacob Onyango anaicheza. Jacob Onyango taka kufunga bonge moja la goli hapa. James Ogachi Mazembe anatafuta last born wa Shabana Austin Odongo, analeta cross kwa Austin Odongo. Salute Shabana! Mr. Boyezeka Jalsin Omuri. Licha kuwa ni Januari, anawapa shibe ya furaha wanatore bobe. Ni vibe kama lote. Gusi hapa toki mtu. Starboy Ezeka Jalsin Omuri walimtazama tu akifanya atakavyo. Alienda kule lakini akakosa mali. Kipa Oyande Brian Opondo Omondi. Kijana yule Sam Kinto anza na Brian Michira Migiro, baada na mpira wake Shemoluo Chodinga. Nakataa Brian Opondo Omondi. Leo lazima kando Oyande. Amefanya kazi kubwa kweli kweli. Aliandaliwa uzuri, nguvu mpya Shemoluo Chodinga. Kina kanyoosha tena mwili wake na kupangua mkwaju wake Shemoluo Chodinga. Watacheza kona Shabana. Leo amefanya kazi kweli kweli. Kina hao wamejua tayari wameshinda, lakini mchezo wa soka haijaisha mpaka ishe, lakini imeisha. Shabana tore bobe. Mechi 5 kabla hapo walikuwa unbeaten ndani ya uga wa Gusii. Wanaendeleza hadi kufikia 6. Ni furaha ribo kwa upande wa mashabiki wale wa Shabana. Lakini imetamatika kutoka Ugawagusi, kutoka Bosongo, Shabana Neyemo, Shabana magoli mawili, Tusker goli moja. Dakika zote 90 umekuwa na Charlson Nyango Mabululu. Hadi wakati
And coming from behind to eventually win that game. That was a major result for Shabana playing against Tusker FC, one of the form teams this season in the FKF Premier League. Well, Posta Rangers played against Nairobi City Stars. And for both of these sides, consistency and trying to get some form has been top of their agenda. So let's get to watch the highlights of that encounter.
Ligi kuu taifa la Kenya imeweza kurudi kwa mwaka tofauti hii leo. Posta Rangers yupo nyumbani, anamwalika City Stars katika uwanja wa Kenyatta, kaunti ya Machakos. Ndio, lakini ni msimu mwaka 2024 mwaka 2025. Watu hapo tayari. Kikosi cha Posta Rangers wamelazimika kufanya badiliko dakika la mwisho katika kupasha misuli. Ameondoka Ivan Ocheng, Eric Juma amekuja, Galamue haki yake mpe. City Stars mwalimu Leonardo Dipo, kikosi amekiamini mfumo 4-3-3. Anakuepo Byron Ocheng, atasaidiwa na papo hapo. Assalamu alaikum, karibu sana katika uwanja wa Machakos, karibu sana Kenyatta Stadium, karibu sana kaunti hii ya Machakos. Ligi kuu taifa la Kenya msimu wa 2024 mwaka 2025. Posta Rangers wananyaraka, wapo nyumbani, City Stars wapo ugenini. Nafasi inatengenezwa mapema huko, mali na kaa uzuri kabisa, ameweza kuanzishwa. Mali ameshindwa kuondoa. Vincent Otieno sasa na chenga wa kwanza, Mali imekatwa, penalty. Alikuwa tayari amepigwa mtama. Alijaribu kuondoa Kevin Opio, akashindwa kuinyanyua. Vincent Otieno Owino alikuwa na Mali, akageresha Crucial Losambo, akamgusa kwa uchache, kajaribu kupambana lakini akenda chini. Na papo hapo Hilary Onyango Cheng, Vincent Owino, goli la kwanza katika mwaka 2025 linaandikishwa na Nairobi City Stars. Anawaambia happy new year, mwaka wa baraka tele, lakini akachezewa madhambi na Vincent Wasambo Crucial. Mwisho wa siku Mali kwa tuta. Referee amejiamini, Shami Mwinyi Kibwana kwake Brian Marita, na ileta ndani huko, nafasi ameweka kitu sasa. Lewis Shivachi anarudisha. Posta Rangers wananyaraka, barua iliyotumwa imefika, na ampatie wenzake moyo. Lakini Lewis Shivachi, Mali ilikuwa imekatwa katikati ya umma, lakini timing yake ikawa nzuri kweli, au reaction yake. Brian Marita alileta nje, ikandaliwa kitu na Kalebo Lilo Kalwes, ikababatizana ikashuka kwake kama mane wa sala. Edwin Buliba aliweka mchezoni Shivachi. Azani akamuliza Collins Korea, je, kuna shinikizo? Akasema hamna shinikizo lolote. Bulugu amekosa utulivu. Stephen Bulugu amemvuta, wanamwambia endo wa mwisho, ni wa mwisho. Ataamua nini Hilary? Kadi mbili amezitoa zipa kwenye mikono yake,
na pia Masawa anakwenda kumwambia kwamba ni njano,
sio last man. Kadi ya njano Stephen Bulugu, one for the team. Alijua tayari amefanya makosa,
kujaribu kukabiliana, lakini kwa wazi unapoangalia unaweza ukasema kwamba ndiye alikuwa mchezaji wa mwisho. Gumzie Stephen Bulugu,
wende kana nafasi ya mwisho kwa Posta Rangers, labda kuondoka na uongozi. Carlos mekatwa, na papo hapo Hilary Onyango Cheng anayari kuweza kumaliza kipindi cha kwanza. Imekuwa na nafasi kwa timu zote mbili, na ishara imeisha moja kwa moja.
That was the first half of that FKF Premier League match that was between Posta Rangers and Nairobi City Stars. Well, let's just take a break before we get into a conversation about the business of sport. And, with Kenya hosting about five major events over the next 2 months, 4 of them, and later at the end of March. But now let's move over now to the where we have got the swearing in of the new Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission's Chief Executive Officer, Abdi Mahmoud, who's being sworn in at the Supreme Court. And this is before the Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome. Let's move over to the Supreme Court.
This office, which is it is not an complete their terms, but it was finished successfully, and doing the rest of Kenyans in rigorous, looking person who could take over that, and that process several. And finally, we settled on our deputy CEO competitively, not because he was the deputy, but successful in that process to come in to take over this. Our very hope when transitions come, it is an opportunity to move the organization to the next level. And just being here with the judiciary as the final step in that process, it actually is also symbolic in the sense that the work that we do as EACC is a work that goes through several processes and several steps, and the judiciary is the final step process. Their success depends on
And we apologize for the technical hitch, but that is the swearing in of the new Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission Chief Executive Officer Abdi Mohammed. And speaking there was the Right Reverend Dr. David Oginde, who is the chair of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. And remember, he takes over from Twalibu Mbarak, who served for a total of 6 years, and his term came to a close on Friday, the 10th of January, 2025. Just to put it into context, is that if you're serving as the CEO of an institution like the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, then you serve in terms of 3 years. And just 2 terms are the maximum. So that is where it is. The event is being held at the Supreme Court, and the swearing in was done before the Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome. Once we have the technical glitch sorted out, we'll be getting back to that conversation. But right now, back to Sports Check, and let's just put it into context. They say it's all about making the hay when the sun shines. We're into the first 2 months of the year. It's all about sunshine. How much hay can you make? Because in the months of February and March, Kenya is going to be hosting events. First of all, the African Nations Championship, the acronym is CHAN. It's derived from French, but you can think Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania are co-hosting that. So that is one of the events that Kenya is hosting. Even as that goes on, Kenya is also going to be hosting the Sirikwa Classic. That is at the end of February. This is a gold level cross-country tour meeting. So Kenya is going to be hosting that in Eldoret. Top athletes invited, and there is a lot that happened. Then we have got the Safari Rally. Everyone talks about this event. It's just about 6 days, or we can simply say it's just about 10 days if you include when the drivers come in and all the activities that they do. They do their recce, do their shakedown, and then get into the competition proper. How much can the country generate from this? How much can Kenya win itself off government reliance for all of these events because they're fully funded by the government. And also, we have got the magical Kenya Open. It's the Kenya Open Golf Championship. It's part of the DP World Tour. This is what was known as a European Tour, the top-level PGA event in Europe. So Kenya is hosting that. And later, we host the world at the Kip Keino Classic, a one-day event, but still a lot of money coming through. And the question is, can we fully optimize the potential the country has when it comes to simply saying we can generate revenue, not just at the top, but even at the grassroots, all people who are around, vendors, there are things you can do about it. And this is the entire sports ecosystem that everyone should be talking about. To speak about that, we've got the research lead at the Africa Sports and Creative Institute, Richard Wanjohi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And later we expect that Cynthia Mumbo, the CEO of Sports Connect Africa and also a member of the board at the Kenya Academy of Sport, is going to be joining us. Richard, let me just put a background to this, is that the Africa Sports and Creative Institute, you know, it's a team of people from the continent that came together and they said sports, and it's a potential development lever for Africa. We see that a lot. We've seen lives transformed in this country. We can speak to Iten, Eldoret, Kapsabet, Nandi Hills as towns that have been fully transformed by the money that comes in from athletics. That we can take away from, from the reality of it. We've seen that. We have seen in Nigeria, and when you go especially to Nigeria, football has transformed the lives of many, same as Egypt, Morocco, in North Africa, and in South Africa. And for the Africa Sports and Creative Institute, what's the background of this, such that you can now have a collective and people give their views and say, where are our opportunities?
So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come once again and share insights around the ecosystem of sports. Just to give you a bit of background, is that the sports sector has, for the longest time, especially on the African continent, been approached from an amateur level or without the requisite business perspective. And this is where we say...
Okay, to be Mchezo level.
Mchezo. So we should stop saying that ni michezo. It's a business, and we need to look at the magnitude and the seriousness and, you know, the opportunities that arise from that. So the way the infrastructure was set up is that we did not have enough practitioners within the space. We still don't have that. I think even as an institution where I work at Strathmore, we have been trying to work around something that we can develop. One, to develop the right skills around it. Two, to develop the right infrastructure, both soft skills and physical skills, physical in the terms of collecting of this data, and third, to offer advisory and advocacy. You have touched on a very good topic of, you know, having 3 or 4 marquee events or sports events that we start kicking off the year. If you look at developed economies like Saudi Arabia, Morocco, what Las Vegas is doing, is that you have 3 or 4 major events that you host within a certain period. Those events can generate enough income or enough revenue for that economy that can sustain that economy for 3 months. That is the opportunity that we need to look out for. So back to the heart of the matter. So in 2018, a gentleman called Bill Mbiako, who was working with the NBA, decided to go back and say, okay, I have been able to develop the infrastructure for NBA Africa. What can I do to appeal to the bigger picture of sports in Africa? And that's how Africa Sports and Creative Institute was born. It has been a very good process, or sort of a number of projects that have kicked off. I think I can give you one of the latest. This is understanding the game. It's an Africa sports industry perspective. Case studies, a number of figures given. Just looking at the whole ecosystem within the sports sector across Africa. We have case studies that represent Africa. I've written one on Enda Sports. This is an apparel company that is domiciled in Kenya that has been able to develop a shoe for Kenya, that was able to kit 3 teams last year during the Paris Olympic Games, Djibouti, Seychelles, and I think one other, Cape Verde. So if you look at the opportunities that we have as African countries in this space, is that we there is a myriad of opportunities coming through, but we need to get it right. We need to get the data, not just collect the data. How can we utilize that data? How can we monetize that data? And how can we appeal to the larger audiences, both private and public sector?
Well, every time you talk about this, and I just need to put this straightforward. And from some of the work that has been done, a full study was done, and one of the things that came out, and this is an area I know you're very passionate about, data, the lack of information about the African sports ecosystem. Yes, what is it? Because there are people, if you get onto social media, there are people who will tell you something about the FKF Premier League, but we also tend to ignore it after some time. How do we manage this?
So, as I said, we have to start from the top. We have to recognize that there is a need to develop that data or have a data-oriented decision-making process. Let me give you some perspective. In 2024, Africa generated about 3.2 trillion USD. If you look at that from a sports perspective, currently sports contributes only 1%, 1 to 2% of the GDP across the continent. That's about 30 billion, give or take. 30 billion USD. Now, to bring it to the local context, our top 5 sports, rugby, athletics, football, volleyball, maybe, and rugby, they need about 150 million USD. If you look at what we are generating currently, it's anything between $500 million to $1 billion USD.
In Kenya?
In Kenya. So if we look at an opportunity of moving that ticker from 1% to 5%, can you imagine the effect that it would have, the ripple effect that it would have on the economy? It's not going to happen immediately. It's a gradual process. But look at what we've already started doing.
Okay, just to put it into context, looking at it, are we looking at the spend on sport?
So we're looking at the wholesome picture.
Because
so
because I would be talking about 100 million USD if I was to basically look at the sports fund, it's the allocation for the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund,
yes,
which is about 100 million USD, which comes to close, 13 billion. But at times you'd see it's about anywhere between 70, it can be actually less, 70 million to $100 million. So that's about 7 billion shillings.
So how do we fund the sports fund?
It's taxes from betting and gambling.
Taxing from betting. How much do the betting firms make?
Now, that is another story because they are the payouts. They are privately, they are not required to publicly disclose, but we can guess.
Exactly.
Just by the tax numbers.
Now, look at that. If you look at the current sponsorship ecosystem in the country, we have almost the top 3 betting companies have put some money in sports. Add into this your telecoms, your FMCGs, and financial institutions. Easily, you get to the figure that I just gave. Now, if you look at that, just the sponsorship by itself, now you also rope in the infrastructure, tartan tracks, equipment, wear, sportswear, and all that. That gives you the picture of the whole ecosystem. Now, if you go deeper now and go, into hospitality, sports tourism, the number becomes even bigger. Because it's just that we have not been able to classify them as such. And if we start doing that, we'll be able to say, this is the effect that sports has on the economy. And this is the effect that some of these events will have. Chan, we'll be hosting this event in, a month and a half? If we are able to...
Half a month. First of... It's actually, how many days? 18 days from now.
18 days from now. If we're able to host it for 2 weeks, do you imagine the effect on the economy, especially in Nairobi and any of the urban areas that will be hosting this? From a hospitality perspective, logistics, transport, and all this. Now, if you multiply that by 3 or 4 events across the year, you can imagine what we're talking about, and that's how we came up with this figure.
All right. So we'll be coming back to that and more onto data. Where do you get, player statistics? Where do you get team statistics? Historical numbers about everything. There are those sports where you can easily get them and others that are not there. And how to promote models of this and understanding the value of data. Richard Njohi will be joining us in the next hour. And also around the same time, I believe that Cynthia Mumbo will be here. Our sign language interpreter this hour has been Brian Muraru. Let's take a short break. We'll be back in a brief.
mimi shida zangu zote hapa ndani ya hii nyumba chanzo chake ni nani? Si ni wewe?
Utachekwa. Yote hayo nayajua.
Yaani mimi sikujua unampenda Karembo kiasi hicho. Ingekuwa ni mimi ungenidekeza. Mwenda wapi? Haifai kuonekana mkizunguka ovyo hapa kisiwani mpaka tujue kesi isha vipi.
Karembo wangu. Karembo, wewe ni wangu. Mimi sina mpenzi mwingine usipokuwa wewe.
Tamu.
Umepanga kunimaliza.
Na maudamu. Ngoja kwanza nataka kukuelezea kitu ni
Customer ameridhika nini?
anataka kokiteli.
Surprise me with anything.
No.
Akili sio vyombo vya wageni. Najua saa zingine jisikilizange ukiongea.
Niliambiwa aloiba vitu zangu alikuwa ni mtu amevalia surupwenye ya kijani kibichi na viatu vya mwalimu jini.
Surupwenye na mwalimu chini tumefanya nini?
I never heard a music so sweet. I repeat.
Wagwan, the bread when big things are going. Remember, each and every Monday we have to shell down the place with nothing but the best of smooth way the vibes in your favorite station. You know these things, man.
Alafu kila Tuesday kata simu tupo side giving you Kenyan music from the 254.
And of course, you can spice up your Wednesday by enjoying blazing hot hip hop and R&B jams.
We don't got no label. She says she want bottles.
Vibes and vibes as we go all across Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, all the way to Tanzania to give you nothing but the best on Afro Thursday. Make sure you make a date with us each and every single Friday with me, DJ_Liza Diva,
DJ Colder,
and me, Wanjiko. This is Club One Extra.
Unanifanya nisikie kunyongwa. Hadija ai, mani especially ukisonga.
Thank you for joining us on Healthy Living. Stay connected to Voice of America at voanews.com. A look at your kidneys and how they impact your health. And an expert discusses chronic kidney disease and how to protect yourself. And Ivorian psychologist Noor Bakayoko shares some insights on bullying and what can be done.
It's important to avoid major events or major health crises.
How do you know if your cough is due to a serious condition? We'll have some answers. Stay well
and strive to make every day a healthy day.
And welcome back to Sports Check on this Monday morning. Well, we've already had a conversation about Kenya and Finland and their cooperation in sport. Just taking a look at the highlights from the FKF Premier League and also keeping up with what's happening in the news cycle today. So just to mention is that the newly appointed Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission CEO, Abdi Mohammed, has been sworn in at the Supreme Court. Aziz Hashim is going to be giving us that story. Nominated Senator, the Honorable Gloria Oroba, will address the press on matters touching on gender-based violence and femicide. And remember also that the National Assembly Committee on Appointments will conduct approval hearings for new 3 cabinet secretary nominees starting tomorrow. And just before we continue with our conversation around sport, let me introduce my sign language interpreter at this hour. Her name is Anne Wangeshi. And before we get into matters sport, let's listen to Chief Justice Martha Koome, who's speaking at the swearing in of newly appointed EACC CEO Abdi Mohammed. So Abdi Mohammed, the newly appointed Ethics and Anti-Corruption CEO, has been sworn in presence of the Chief Justice Martha Koome, and he was the Deputy CEO of the EACC, and he has taken over from Twalib Mbarak, who exited the commission on Friday, the 10th of January, upon the expiry of his 6-year term. So Abdiaziz Hashim is going to be giving us that story later today. So let's get back to our conversation, and it is all about the business of sport. And just to give a context to it, 4 marquee events Kenya is going to be hosting. Chan, co-hosting with Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, and this is purely a dry run for AFCON 2027. So a lot of investment, the work going on. We've seen people are working 24 hours a day to make sure that Kenya sporting infrastructure, especially the stadia, are ready for that. Number one. Then there is also the Sirikwa Classic, a continental and World Athletics gold level cross-country meeting. We've got the WRC Safari Rally in March and also the Kenya Open Golf Championship. Those are 4 events. All the noise is what everyone should be expecting around the events as they get closed. Just to talk about this, because this is one business opportunity over the next 2 months for a lot of people. Richard Wanjohi, who is the research lead at the Africa Sports and Creative Institute, a body that does a lot of the research and thinking about the sporting sport as a business. How can it generate revenue? How can it be of benefit to the young people who are the most active people in the sports ecosystem? So Richard, we were talking about data, and let's understand the value of this data. We were talking, for example, if we refer to the media rights for the FKF Premier League, the value is known, $2 million for Azam, coming from Azam. We know how much is allocated to the sports fund, because that is now publicly available information through the budgetary process and also through the report, and other open sponsorship that go out to sporting federations for various events. But how do we then transform this data to make sure that it now makes sense, such that if I want to go pitch to corporate A, then there is the value around it?
So what happens with data is that data, unless you are able to utilize it or make key decisions with it, it's just data. So in this essence then, every sports federation or the government in its true essence should be able to collect this data on a regular basis. For example, we'll have Chan that is coming up in a month's time or in a few weeks' time. Are we able to collect the data of how many foreign guests that we've attracted? Are we able to collect the information of local fans that will be participating, both in the matches, but also in the audiences that we'll have in the different localities? What's the effect on the hospitality? What's the effect on the logistics? How many arrivals will we have, both domestic and local and regional tourists? So if you look at that, you're able to, look at the impact of sports, not just from a business perspective, but from an economic and social perspective. If you look at what we have done now with Chan and all these events that we are hoping to host, is that we have worked on developing the infrastructure. Post the events, what are we looking at? We'll have Africa Cup of Nations coming in 2 years. So are we able to continue within that space to improve our league as a country? Are we able to attract huge sponsorships that are able to make our clubs be comfortable again, want to be able to develop a very vibrant domestic league, but also participate in continental championships? We have seen the performances of our teams at the continental level. If we are able to push the numbers, first of all, to have the fans back in the stadiums, secondly, to have sponsors, I don't see why we should not be able to be among the best in the continent. We have enough competitions that have come through. We have the CAF Champions League. We have the AFL that has been sponsored by the Saudi-backed businesses. We have the Africa Cup of Nations that is coming at a national level. So all these are opportunities that we can look at and say, this is something that we are able to collect the data and say, from the time that we were able to host this tournament to the time that we have AFCON, this is the effect of the sports sector.
Let's talk about that. And for you to collect that data, one of the things you need to do is to look at the human capital. I mean, look at the people who are supposed to be picking up this data. Some of it can be, you can aggregate it using AI tools. If it's entries of foreigners, that can be aggregated easily through the immigration portal. But how do you get people to do this such that even if they are doing this, from the support, let me call it the back end of supporting a sports business ecosystem?
Yes. So this is, again, it has to be a deliberate effort from all players, be it government, be it the sports federation, any of the players in this space. Because at the end of the day, what are we saying? We have invited people to come and see our game or see the sport, but then what are we offering to the world? Are we able to give the audiences? What are the audiences going to attract? If you look at corporates, do I have the numbers that I can put my money and reinvest that money in it? For the government, the infrastructure that I've built, what are the socio-economic impacts? Am I able to, have youth clubs or, youth programs beyond the tournaments? We have the Kenya Academy of Sports that is continually training people in that space. So we have people who will come on the back end in the collection of the data, but they will also be able to utilize that data to make better decisions within the ecosystem.
What are, the real things that you have seen from the studies that you did, and apparently it's part of this book, Africa Sports Industry, Understanding the Game. 400 plus pages of information here.
So part of this conversation has led to what we're calling the Road to 5 project. This is a project that is looking at impacting the sports ecosystem across the continent. So currently, as I said, we in Africa, sports contribute between 1% and 2% of the total GDP. So we were saying, can we push the ticker up to about 5%? Because the global average is between 7 to 10%, and more developed economies even 12%. Your Englands, your USA. So as a continent, if we're able to push that from 1 to 2%, beyond the 2% to about 5% continually in the next 2-3 years, we can be able to see the impact at a social level and also at an economic level. We have been seeing the sort of unemployment that exists within the economy. If we are able to provide opportunities for this youth, as we've said, we have 4 marquee events between now and the end of March. If you're able to give short-term contracts to these people who are either in internship or still in college, or they don't have an opportunity, you'll be able to provide an income for this person to do something with them, with their lives for the next 3 months. If we look at the bigger picture, Africa will be hosting the World Cup in 2030. What happens during the World Cup? Countries from around the world come.
Yes, Morocco, co-hosting. With Portugal and Spain.
With Portugal and Spain. What happens during the World Cup? All the teams coming to play come to different countries within that continent to acclimatize. So what does that mean? If you have the right infrastructure, if you have the right capital, human capital, you become an attractive location for people to come and pitch camp for about a month or so. So what we are saying is that we are not doing this for now, for just CHAN or AFCON. We are looking at the long-term picture. South Africa is hoping to host the Olympics in 2036. So if we have all those dots and I's in place, and we start now, those opportunities will not be a missed opportunity. It will be us saying, no, we have enough that we cannot, we can let the other countries do that. Our good neighbors, Rwanda, you've seen what they've done in the last couple of years. They've been able to develop the infrastructure. As late as December, they were able to host the FIA Awards, a huge opportunity for those in the motor automobile space.
And they want to host, and they want to put up a Formula One track, proper. We already have Kyalami in South Africa. I'll not talk about Kenya's. We were told about one 12 years ago. But Rwanda looks like they may be set to that. Because that brings in now where the collaboration between sports federations and public authorities, where public authorities have the lead in ensuring that this is developed.
Yes, it's important for governments to recognize that they cannot do this alone. You have institutions, you have private sector people who can come in and, use their skills, their infrastructure, but also their expertise to be able to develop what you need in this space. For example, for CHAN that we will be having in a few weeks, what about the ticketing, the media rights, making this an appealing event across the different audiences, because you have about 2 or 3 generations who are going to be watching this sport, some for the first time. I have my family who have never gone to a live football match. So if you're able to appeal to all these audiences, who do you need? Private sector, people who have been in that space that will be able to appeal to these things.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, you mentioned about Rwanda and how Rwanda, has taken the lead. Actually, I'll mention 2 countries. One, Morocco, through a royal initiative, And number two, we also have got Rwanda. And, you know, people may not agree with, at times, with the political system there, but what's this story that, you know, that this person has President Kagame has said, if you want to host anything, there's only one place to come outside of Morocco, Rwanda.
At the end of the day, the head of state or the head of government has to make that decision. It has to be a deliberate effort from the highest office of the land. Morocco, as you state, the king himself for the last 10, 15 years has deliberately invested in sports. That's how Morocco was able to match what they have been given by FIFA to be able to build football academies and the right infrastructure. That's why they were able to qualify for the World Cup and make an impact in the World Cup. Now they have gone beyond the World Cup and decided they want to host this World Cup. Coming back to Rwanda, Rwanda made a deliberate effort to say, we want to invest in infrastructure. How do we do this? First of all, we appeal to the world and tell them we have locations that you can come and visit. Beyond the visiting, you have infrastructure like the Amahoro Stadium. You have what they're proposing with the F1. These are opportunities that will bring you visitors, but also have an impact beyond just the events that you'll have within that particular time.
Well, it's very interesting how this works. The other one that comes into play is that when it comes to just around the infrastructure and getting a lot of these events ready is what is now known as a public-private partnership. I'll use the Kenyan model, for example. When you look at the Kenya Open Golf Championship, heavily supported by the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund. And also when you look at the Kipkeino Classic, if you look at the Safari Rally, a lot of investment by the government, the private sector coming in. And as these events grow, with even the president last year speaking at Hell's Gate saying, look, WRC Safari Rally, great event and everything, but you need to be weaned off relying on the government. Not every event is Serikali's idea. Working with the corporates. How's the way to do this?
So as I had stated before, for any event or for any project that has that magnitude, for example, what we are hosting as CHAN or any of the major events that we'll host as a country, both the private and public sector have to come into play. Public in the sense that you have to build the infrastructure, you have to provide the right atmosphere. So for example, immigration, you reduce the fees or, provide an enabling environment for the entry and exit of visitors. But what does the private sector then do? You come and say, because I have a tournament of this magnitude, I'll put in 500,000 shillings because I get this visibility. And you have 3 or 4 companies that will decide to sponsor either one or the other aspect of that tournament. That is how you work together as private and public partnership. It cannot be in isolation, and that is something that we have noticed. You cannot say that the government will do 100% or the private sector will do 100%. Everyone has to play in that space, because at the end of the day, your fans, your sports people, everyone has an effect. One, if for the players, they're being taxed by the same regime. 2, the fans will have to pay something as they get into these venues, so you have to have some income. Everyone in that ecosystem is affected by both the private and the public sector.
All right. Well, Richard Wenjo, he was research lead at the Africa Sports and Creative Industry. And joining us is Cynthia Mumbo, CEO Sports Connect Africa, and also serves on the board of the Kenya Academy for Sports. Cynthia, welcome. Pole for the traffic, the traffic situation in the capital. Yes. I know people are now getting back. We would say normal services have resumed in Nairobi. So apologies for this traffic situation. But talking about this, and you've had Richard speak about now how public-private partnerships that are and how they would work for sport. Mm-hmm. But now you have been involved, out there, and you've seen how the demand of the public sector and also the demands of the private sector. How do the two blend to ensure that for example, the 4 marquee events we are delivering in Kenya do work well?
Well, I'll always go back to the conversation around policy and the conversation around investment. So what is government's policy behind sports, and how are they creating an enabling environment? As I walked in, you were talking strongly about how the government is being advised to step aside because they are putting in, 60, 70, 80%, which is the truth. Anywhere where you go out there in the world, the government is an enabler. They don't necessarily do the hard, the hardcore bit, the operational work. So what policies do we have in place that support investment behind sports? And for the private sector, if we look at our country, Kenya, East Africa, for example, and most of Africa, what kind of private investment has gone into sports? Infrastructure is generally largely owned by government. But my take is that should move slightly off government, because then, you would be having an opportunity to create revenue and a backdrop where there's employment created. So as much as government does have ownership of these infrastructure, my take has always been government should be an enabler create policy that enables investment from the private sector. And then, spur growth within the sports space. The other thing that I'm very critical about is capacity and capability. I think Richard knows I speak about this, and yourself as well. I'll talk about this. We have a lot of young people who are knowledgeable in so many different, disciplines, whether it's business, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's marketing, whether it's, medicine. If you look at sports, every single one of these professions, media, every single one of these professions has some touch on sports. But how are we also, again, creating an environment where we have the right people who understand what sports business is, or what sports operations is, or what sports, investment and all of that is, what sports medicine is, what's coaching, the technical aspect. How are we creating an environment that spurs the ecosystem so that there's some sort of return, and having the right people in the right spaces doing those jobs? I think, for the longest time, we've always looked at sports as mchezo.
Mchezo.
We call it mchezo. In fact, the Swahili word makes it really hard for us, because in the minds of the society, sports ni mchezo, it's just something that we do to play. So even when you're going through your studies, no one really remembers that you can actually be a great marketer and be a great marketer in sports. You could get employment in one of the football teams or one of the basketball teams or the leagues or whatever. So I see it as a very big opportunity, not really challenges, because challenges are there to be overcome. So it's a big opportunity for the current government and the systems that are there to create platforms and really just an enabling environment to spur the growth of sports.
Maybe in addition to that, the current curriculum that we have, the curriculum-based, competence-based curriculum,
CBC.
One of the tracks that they have as a pathway for future, leaders of this country is sports science. And I think that has not been stated as it ought to be. In the next 4 years, we'll have the first tranche of these students joining universities, higher institutions or tertiary institutions. Are we ready as a country to absorb these people? Have we developed the right infrastructure within the universities or within these institutions to have courses like, for example, she said sports science, data that is able to look at sports differently, sports law, which is becoming quite integral in the a policy decision or a policy and decision making. Are we able to look at this and say, this person can move from this point to the next point and be able to succeed in this track?
Well, when it comes to all of this, one of the conversations that actually comes up at the end of this, the biggest, sport has a consumer. And the question is, how do you engage the fund? One, there's the biggest platform today, which is TV, either pay or free to air, but there is what we call the grassroots. And Cynthia, you do a lot of this. And, for example, if you want to have an event in Eldoret, how do you then put it down there such that there is enough noise and the locals can enjoy it?
Sports generally is a reward business. It's a reward business. It doesn't matter whether it's the guy on the pitch or the guy off the pitch. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because we are currently managing a tournament called Bingwa Fest, where we have 3,000 athletes, football, basketball, rugby and athletics, roughly about 3,000 athletes coming together to to compete for 17 million shillings prize money. Nothing of its kind in the whole continent, by the way. Yes, it's a mini kind of Olympics, if you would say. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, right? From an operational perspective, you have to have a team that kind of puts all these things together. But from the other perspective of fan engagement, we've created a product that people are now interested in, because teams are winning something. There's competition. What do fans want? They want to watch good competition. But beyond that, we go out and about a week or two before the tournament, we push a lot of marketing at the local radio stations. We do a lot of on-ground engagement. So we have these big trucks that go around the different communities within that region and push people to come. You have to talk to people. No one's going to come to you unless they know. So we do a lot of that, but we also reward the fans. So if I'm on the ground, is it a kakofia that someone will go back home with? We do engagement, especially on the basketball side. I'm a specialized, specialized lover of basketball. What we do is fun engagement right at the pitch level. During the halftime, we have a dunking competition where, out of the blue, we'll tell guys, this wasn't planned, but we've got 10,000 shillings for you, or this, yes, and we reward the fans. We go into football and we blindfold a fan and tell them, you kick, if it goes in, we'll give you 3,000 or 5,000. It's created a buzz so that now everyone's asking, when's the next Bingwa Fest? When are we, where are you going next? Well, how can we prepare? Even for athletes, it's really, really, really caused so much excitement. In athletics, we had athletics in Eldoret, which is basically the home of running. We had 1,500 athletes who had registered, and guys were going home with 300,000 shillings, 250, and it's equal between men and women. So we don't discriminate and say men will get 1 million shillings if they win the football game, and the women will get 500,000 if they win. Everyone's a winner equally. So it has really created a buzz, because the level of competition has really, really grown, and gone up. We were expecting just to have your everyday typical guys who would never have the opportunity, really. But then now we're beginning to see even those who are, I would say, semi-professional, are saying, this is an opportunity for us to win. Even out there, we might not really get the opportunity to win like this. But also fans who think, maybe I could try, are also coming in and saying, can I run against these big great guys, or can I play basketball against some of the best who are representing us at the national level? And we're beginning to see amazing talent coming off this pipeline. But back to the question that you've asked around fan engagement, we really, really, really talk to people on ground. We speak the language that they speak. We go down and reach out to them. Do you have a market day? We're now going to Meru. So every market day that will be there before we get into Meru, we will be in the market speaking the language. And then we have amazing entertainment. So after every event, we have sort of a concert and an after-party concept where we bring in, musicians and artists that they otherwise would never have access to. So you can imagine having Major in Eldoret and you're not paying. If you have MC Gogo in Kisumu and you're not paying, So we have a really good list of entertainers, so it really blends into it. You come, you enjoy yourself. By the time we're giving the last medal, the noise is beginning at the big stage, and we're really just getting guys to feel like it's not just a sport, it's sport and entertainment and music, because sports is entertainment, really. Yep.
Now, working with the media, and this is, I know earlier you were asking me, who are the broadcasters around China. I mean, they're going to be published. Because, oh yes, don't worry. we already know 3. So it's actually, I mean, it's a very, I'll put it as a conversation that's, been going there. But when you look at media numbers and from what you've done here, looking at, for example, responses in South Africa, we know beIN has dominated Northern Africa, and Azam is dominating Tanzania. A very interesting concept, I have to say, in Africa. What's the media engagement to the fan? How do we connect with this? Get the connection with this product? Because that's where the money now is, TV.
I think for me, first of all, the custodians of the game have to get it right. If there's no game, if, for example, I'm not seeing the quality of the game, for example, in football or rugby, you will not have the fans on the ground. And if I don't have fans on the ground, the TV or the media people will not come to our game. It's as simple as that. So it has to be, you get your product right. Once you have your numbers, then the media people or the sponsors will come on board and you'll have a conversation around that. Good example is the African Cup of Nations that we had in 2024. Without the numbers that Cote d'Ivoire commanded, they would not have been able to get the respectability of the different media companies that they engaged. And we saw what happened. Once you're able to engage and give the quality of game on the pitch, everything just falls into place. I'll give a good example, rugby. 10 years ago, before, and I know the purists will kill me for this, before we moved rugby from the traditional Ngong Road, venues, it was a largely recluse of those areas. But once we were able to demystify and move it to other parts of the country, it became a national sport because we were able to go to Western, we were able to go to Mombasa, we were able to do sevens in central parts of Kenya. Once you demystify the sport and the fans come in, then the media will come on board and be able to, first of all, air the games. Secondly, be able to critique and give a bigger picture of the sport.
Cynthia?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with him, and just want to add that we're in the digital era. You cannot run away from the conversations that go on the digital spaces. So if you look at the last AFCON, the data that came out from that in terms of just their access and their push on the digital platforms is numbers that we've never seen that before. 1 billion impressions across the globe on TikTok. I mean, it was just amazing. We have to understand that everything always also goes back, 1, to the bottom line, and 2, to numbers. So he's a data guy. He will always come back and say, let's talk about the data. So if you're going to speak about reaching out to these to fans, where are they? Are they on TV? Maybe, but probably you'll find them more on your social media platforms. So TV really is there to show the game, but the conversations happen on your social media platforms. And CAF have done an incredible job. They did an incredible job in the last AFCON in terms of just being present in the digital space and having conversations and creating an enabling environment for people to speak and push the stories and push each other to say, I cannot miss this game, or I cannot miss, because ultimately it's about what the fan really wants. It's about the conversations that drive people to say, okay, there's this thing happening, I want to watch it, where can I find it? They're all intertwined. You can't have just the game on TV. You can have a game on TV and people don't know about it. So if you have to have the game on TV, what conversations are going, what advertising is going to let people know, what social engagement do you have, which influencers do you have that are having a conversation or pushing people to watch this content?
Let me give one example, one final one, and it's from the basketball that Cynthia loves. We know South Sudan.
Yes.
We know what they did during the Olympic Games. Do you know right now South Sudan still doesn't have an indoor basketball court?
They don't even have a league.
Well, I can guarantee you there's work in progress.
There's work in progress, but
yes.
for a long, I looked at the team, somebody at City Oilers, the rest of them Australia, Europe.
Yeah, they're all from out.
Can you imagine they were able to put this team together, put them in a camp, qualify for the Olympics, be able to get close to beating the US before the Olympics, and they put there, like they were present at
in
the
the last
Olympic
2 years. It didn't happen overnight either.
You see, it's a process. You have to get it right, and it starts by building the game, building the right infrastructure. Then once you get it out there, the media just comes and amplifies that.
Lakini si unajua watu ni warefu, si hatuwezi shindana nao. That's a conversation that was out there when it came all down to that. And this is where you've got the willingness of the people behind this sport. We know that if your federation is in a mess, hosting an event is difficult. Governance.
Right?
And Cynthia, we know that there is an initiative by the government to look at the policy and legal framework of sports. It's chaired by John Hager, Senior Counsel, and looking at it from your years working with sporting federations or institutions, how much work needs to be done? Because I've had corporates say, it doesn't matter how good the guy at the top is, that's not a sport we want to be involved with.
I'll go back. Capacity, capability. Who do you have running this stuff? Our federations are so politically inclined. It's all about politics. They forget the operational excellence. And that's a governance issue. So half of the time, or 90% of the time, if you ask me, most of the federations, and I'll probably take away football, I'll take away rugby, but most federations, you'll find that the chairman or the president of the federation is also they are the decision-making people, but they don't have the competency to run the federation. We're now very technical when it comes to operational work around sports. So the other thing is you'll find that many of them have other jobs. This is not their full-time job. But if I go to Morocco, the guy who is running the league, that's his job. There's the political space, but then, and they act like an advisory board of sorts. And then you have the operational framework. And these guys go into the office in the morning, what is our strategy? Where do we want to be in the next 10 years? What do we need to make sure that we get there? How do we execute it? So unfortunately, we still have a space where we are running sports like it was being run in the 70s or the 80s. We cannot survive. You can't beat the best. Even when you go to South Sudan, you realize that they constituted, there's a way of working that they have created. Yes, they're tall and everything, but then from a governance space, there's things that they're actually putting in place. So there's no shortcut in sports. It is exactly as it is on the pitch, as it is off the pitch. If you want to win, it is a long-term investment. You have to invest on the technical aspect, the right players, the right people who work around the players, but it's the same thing on the back end, that you cannot win unless you have the right strategy and the right people and the right governance structures off the pitch as well.
Richard.
Thank you. And I'll add to what Cynthia said. If you look at how we constitute our sports federation, we have about, I think, 27 or
32 Olympic sports, and there are others that are non-Olympic.
And they're like almost 90.
Exactly.
Yes.
But each of these federations does not have the proper governance structure. So you ought to have your board and your management team. So the board oversees what
Kenya,
the
it's known as the secretariat.
The secretariat.
We need to move from that.
So we need to change because of the way we have structured sports across the globe. Good example, the way FKF had, built away Kenya Premier League and be able to run Kenya Premier League as a private or almost like a separate entity, but still within the umbrage of the federation.
Yes, license somebody to run your top tier division.
Exactly. There's a CEO who does the day-to-day running of that
Even
federation.
if you had it internally, it's okay.
Yes.
But just separate the management of the league, which is a product on its own, from the day-to-day, political and operational work of the federation, which I believe is national team issues and stuff like that.
Exactly. And that's how you run any organization worth its salt. And as we said, you're not approaching this sport from an amateur perspective. It's fully professional. And that's how, again, you'll be able to relate with your governance body at the international level. So if World Athletics is able to see what are you doing as Athletics Kenya, your secretariat or your management board is doing a good job. Are you able to rope in the right sponsors? Are you having the key events? Then now we can be able to give you something extra, and we can be able to give you that capacity. I'll go back to what we've been trying to do as an institution, and I think Cynthia has been part of this conversation. We are telling federations, we know it has not been rosy and everything, but we can enable you by training your people and telling them, okay, you are at this level, can we move you to the next level? Can we try and look at your ethics and governance issues? Can we look at a policy framework? Can we be able to move you from thinking of this just as sort of a handbag to an opportunity that you can generate revenue for the federation or for the sport?
So, Cynthia, this is one of the reasons I have this. 2 months, February and March, Chan, Sirikwa Classic, Safari Rally, Kenya Open Golf Championship. What will you be looking at around these events to what lessons that are being put out there, or is it hii ni mradi ingine tumalize?
We have Chan in 2 weeks.
Yes, 18 days.
18 days. It's about 2 weeks, maybe 3 if you do plus or minus. What conversations are going on with the people? Who knows?
Kiwanja iko wapi? I know that is the biggest question I'm being asked every day.
Nyayo, I believe, is ready.
Yes.
Kasarani, there's hope that it will be ready.
They've been given until the 20th.
We are praying. My question is, right now, all KBC should be screaming about Chan.
Tazima mic.
No, you should be paying for it.
Okay.
But you get my point. All platforms. There's something that South Africa does so well. And I'll give an example of the Springboks. Anytime the Springboks are playing, or there's something happening around the Springboks, every Friday, all kids, and this is free promo, somebody could use it, all kids go and wear Springboks shirts every Friday. It's no question. They close school at 2 p.m. because it's a game at 4. Everyone go home and watch Springboks. So let's watch in school or something. We have to understand that the fun is a really critical part of this conversation. Of course, we need to get ready. But if we're going to have Chan in a few weeks, from an operational perspective, I'm not involved, so I'm not sure what's happened. But just from a marketer's perspective, at least by now, we should be having a lot of conversations going on everywhere.
Okay. Richard, what will you be observing? I've mentioned the 4 events over the next 2 months. It's that big for the country.
Yes. So for me, again, it's the fun. How are you able to bring the fun to the venues? I'll give an example of the Kipkeino Classic. 2 years it was held at Kasarani. I think last year they tried to move it to Nyayo.
Yeah, it went to Nyayo, yes.
Because of the renovation and everything. That event, because of 1 or 2 athletes, has been able to attract between 5,000 to 8,000 fans on any particular day. If we are able to bring marquee athletes to that event, have maybe Sharika or whoever, one other sprinter or 2 other sprinters, you will be able to attract 10,000 fans in that stadium. Chan, it will be here for 2 weeks.
A month?
A month.
1st February to 28th February.
Okay.
Can we get our fans back to the stadium?
We will. That is part of what we will have to do. It's a conversation, that can go on, because I know Cynthia's just wondering, 18 days away and she doesn't have the noise. And anyway, I've been told I need to start making the noise. We will keep doing that, and remember that the draw for the Championship of African Nations is on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Thank you very much, Richard. And thank you very much for being with us. Our sign language interpreter has been Anne Wangeshi. Take a break, and much later we'll be joining our team from the Kurunzi Mashiani and Tamrini desks. Have a good day. I am Daniel Wahome.
What do you know about Kenya?
Kenya is a country in East Africa known for its diverse wildlife, national parks, and scenic landscapes.
Are you still wondering just how it's even possible for a machine to listen to someone and speak back? Well, that's a remarkable demonstration of the power of artificial intelligence, a technological innovation that has been developed to simulate human intelligence and perform tasks that typically require human cognition.
AI are just here to lend a digital helping hand.
Through AI, machines can understand human language, interpret spoken commands, generate human-like responses, and even engage in meaningful conversations. This has enabled the creation of virtual assistants, chatbots, and other AI-driven systems that enhance human-computer interaction and improve productivity in various domains. The Global Media Congress held in Abu Dhabi in November 2023 addressed topics related to the innovations in media and digital landscapes, with a specific focus on the application of artificial intelligence in journalism and the challenges associated with its adoption.
Welcome to the Global Media Congress in the wonderful Emirate of Abu Dhabi. We have some special guests joining us today. To the fascinating world of